Okay, hello and welcome to the Grinpressions for the Monster Hunter Beta. I'm your host, Owen, aka Gargantara, and today I am joined with...
I'll start Kayla. I'm the staff writer and I do animations and stuff for the site.
I'm Nick. I'm the news editor and one of the writers, and I just generally do a bit of everything.
I'm Blake. I am a writer and I just do reviews and news. Well, not much news.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with the backstory in terms of Monster Hunter experience. So for me, I've been playing it since Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate on the 3DS, and pretty much the first one that I got introduced with other than just trying out the original Monster Hunter as well as Monster Hunter 3rd Portable on the PSP. Kayla?
So I've never actually played a Monster Hunter game before. I've always wanted to, but I've never had a console at the time to play it. So this is my first kind of foray into the Monster Hunter world. And yeah, it's good. Do you want to go, Nikki?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm very tired. I've just come back from work too. Yeah, so I've played a bit of Monster Hunter in the past, mainly Monster Hunter 4, I think it was on the 3DS, whichever one came out alongside the new 3DS. And I put about 20 hours into that. But beyond that, I haven't played any other Monster Hunters, but I've kind of kept up with the series following it.
So the only Monster Hunter I played was on the PSP, and I didn't play much of it, but I enjoyed a little bit of it. I didn't really play much because I was like, I don't know, I think I was like 12 or something, and I didn't really know much of the game. I'm looking to get back into Monster Hunter with Monster Hunter World.
Okay, and yeah, we've all sunk in quite a bit of time. I mean, I think I've hunted all of them at least a dozen times. I don't know about you guys, but I pretty much had I had a blast with the demo.
Yeah, I have to say I really enjoyed it. Being sort of like new to it, when I jumped in, I had trouble sort of getting used to the controls. I feel like someone who has played the others would be able to jump in and sort of know what they're doing, but trying to get a handle on the weapons was really tricky for me.
Yeah, kind of similar to actually Kayla there. The initial sort of jumping in, the controls did feel a little bit like clunky and a bit unresponsive. Some of the weapons definitely feel less mobile than others, but after a couple of hours, it kind of became second nature, and I kind of knew what I was doing, was able to sort of be a little more of a support role. And then the beta ended, and I'm really sad. And the release date can't get here quick enough because goodbye Destiny 2. You're going on the shelf for a while because Monster Hunter World is where it's going to be, baby.
Oh, yeah. So the controls were fairly easy to pick up. I think I killed every monster. I didn't really. I didn't play much of. I didn't really help people kill monsters. I was more of trying to track it down the whole time. When I was attacking the monster, I found it very...
Yeah, I mean, we managed to all get together and hunt Anjanath, and Anjanath went fine, but I think our stories about Diablos and Rathalos...
Oh, Rathalos was a nightmare.
Not fun. I mean, it was fun, but...
Oh, I actually really enjoyed that fight. I was going toe-to-toe with that guy one-on-one for a long time while you were all kind of blundering through the swamps trying to find me.
Yeah, that was kind of my only real problem with that fight was, again, because the maps are now sort of open world with, you know, the air fingers, like open world. Trying to navigate them, at least for me, was hellish. And so when he ends up in the middle of the map, I was like, I'm there, he should be here, but I was like 2 levels below, and it took me a good 5 minutes to then finally figure out how to get there, because the little insect flies, I'm sorry, I've forgotten their name, they just weren't working half the time for me.
Yeah, those scout flies didn't seem to play well with Rathalos whatsoever, which is... Because, what was it, when we were fighting against Diablos, Rathalos, Gyarados, Anjanath, and Jagras, like, in terms of the responsiveness to the scout flies instantly picking up on their location where they were going, it was insanely quick. But with Rathalos, the scout flies wouldn't be active until Rathalos got to a certain location, then you'd be standing there just going, I
was just going to say very quickly that I feel like possibly that could have been because it was a beta, and obviously because, although they were in the build, they weren't, you know, you were not, like, maybe they were, I don't know, like, I feel like maybe that will be fixed.
Wasn't it the only one that could actually fly out of all the ones that we fought as well? So I'm wondering if the fact that it's flying, the flies can't track it as well as other ones.
That is a possibility considering how flying tends to work.
So yeah, so pathfinding might just get disabled when it's flying until it lands, and then when it does land, I guess the fireflies have got to try and then find a path to it rather than already have one.
I think that's probably like brings us on to our first really good point is the scout flies. I kind of really like that mechanic.
Yeah, absolutely. When it works, it's really good. I feel like the more you play, the more you probably just get used to the map and like behaviors of the monsters and where they'll likely go next. So you probably end up ignoring them. But as a way to kind of explore the map, sort of especially as like a newbie, it works really well.
That is a great thing you point out, is the fact that the maps are so massive. Like, I don't think we stopped exploring.
And it's not just like on a flat level either. You've got like upper and lowest climb to houses, and then
Lots of vertical.
yeah, like forts make your way through caves. Like there was a bit where I think we were after I forget which one it was called. The one with the big nose.
Anjanath.
Yes, Anjanath. Me and Nikki were tracking it, and I went one way through a cave, crawled like under these tiny little crawl spaces, and ended up getting there really late because Nikki had found another route much quicker.
What's also really nice as well is that because you can fast travel between the camps, you know, you can sort of plan a little bit more accordingly, go in more strategically. But what's nice about that verticality as well is that jumping on top of monsters is now much more feasible, and actually being able to bring them down and give your team time to really lay into them feels much more rewarding now because you have to properly trek to get above them. You know, you've got to work quick.
Definitely. I mean, the whole mounting mechanic was introduced in 4U and for Ultimate, sorry. And during that, the only weapon that could reliably get you to mount a monster was the insect glaive. But then in Monster Hunter Generations, they introduced aerial style, which allowed you to basically every single weapon could do mounting damage. And then you'd eventually just mount it and topple it. And I'm pretty sure, like, for early, like, game for Generations, mounting, being an aerial gun lance was an insane prospect because of the fixed damage. But for World, it's kind of, because everyone can do it just using the verticality. I mean, I know with the slingshot, you could actually grapple onto certain areas and just jump down onto it. I mean, one of the prime examples is the fact that when you go to the Rathalos nest and you blow up the water dam for it and knock it down, you can actually insta-mount it the moment it crashes onto the floor because you're just falling after it.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the fact that there's no fall damage as well offers these moments of like just amazing, like epic attacks. So as you mentioned with the waterfall, I think I had the sword, the great sword. I forget which one it is. The really big one.
Yeah, you had the great sword.
Yeah. One of the fights we did with that, as I was coming down, I just landed a massive blow on it when I was falling down. Like doing that with such a big weapon just feels so satisfying.
I think as well, like what was really nice is that actually like jumping and then doing an aerial attack and bringing yourself to the ground with good impact felt powerful. Like all the weapons, and Monster Hunter's always done this, but like the actual feel of the weapons, especially like even the bow, it's translated really well across the PlayStation 4, and you know, you feel that you're actually doing something, even though the numbers like only come up to like 6 damage. But once you get to know the weak spots and how best to use your weapons, you do feel like you're really ripping into them, even in the beta with like low level gear.
Karma, do you have anything to add, or?
Not really. I didn't really use the aerial attacks a lot because I didn't find myself being above the monster. I was mostly on ground level with it.
What weapons did you use during the beta then?
I used. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the gun. It's like the big machine gun where you can load different types of ammo into it. You can load like fire ammo.
Yeah, you were using the heavy bowgun. I think it was called the Steel Advance.
Yeah,
if I remember. correctly.
I think so. But I was on the ground at a distance shooting the monsters. I wasn't really up close in the beta, which I kind of regret because I wish I got more experience with the hand-to-hand combat, sort of more experience with the weapons and stuff.
I actually felt that I had more trouble with ranged weapons than I did with melee. I don't know if that's just my play style, but I found that I was able to avoid a lot more attacks just by being in and close and kind of getting underneath these like big monsters, as opposed to being sort of ranged and having them with like a perfect line of like charge at me.
Oh yeah, I was getting attacked a lot by charges, but yeah, that's kind of an issue with the ranged weapons actually. Like you don't really have. Oh, I don't know. I can't really.
I mean, for me, I mean, having a lot of experience when it comes to trying to dodge monsters and just the heavy charges they can do, I noticed that the iframes were incredibly forgiving. I don't know if that's the demo or if that's going to be part of the new gen of world as a whole. But in terms of dodging, like, there were quite a few times where I'd be doing the slide dodge with the charge blade and hits that I'd think, oh, I probably won't be able to do it, but just try and dodge it. And Anjanath and Rathalos wouldn't just connect with it at all. I mean, Diablos was the only odd one, but that's because Diablos has a very long wind-up charge attack that lasts for several iframes. But with the bow, that was kind of insane against Barith, where I would just outright dodge some of its charge attacks, even though having played a lot of Monster Hunter, especially with bow, it's like, I shouldn't have dodged that. I should have taken that hit and lost like half my health, which Diablos was doing regardless. But yeah, I mean, it might just be like a high level thing that the dodges feel refined, or it might be that in the core gameplay, when you kind of just go ham, you don't necessarily pick up these small nuances maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right there, and I think for me, I was having the opposite experience, but it felt genuine to me. So as I was going up close and personal with them, I'm getting like confused, like underneath their legs and stuff, and I'm being hit by limbs. That sort of thing. Like, where did that come from? But when you actually think about it, it's like, oh, actually, yeah, I'm stood there and he's whipping his tail around, or he's stomping about. It's like, yeah, that's gonna hit me.
Yeah, that sometimes the camera would play against you, and you'd be stuck under the monster, and you'd be like, oh, what's going on? But sometimes you could actually just get out of it, depending on how you sort of played the dodge and the way the animations worked. And I think that is a testament to how good the hitboxes in at least the beta were. Like I was really impressed with hitboxes, really forgiving, like on terms of what you take, but ensuring that when you do get hit, you at least have a reason as to why.
Just to add in terms of the hitboxes, with the longsword, I noticed that I wasn't tripping people as much as I used to, at least in Generations, where when you're doing your spirit combo, there's one where you're side swiping left and right just repeatedly, I think like 3 or 4 times, and most of the time you would be tripping someone, or even with the dual blades where if you do the demon dance, if somebody was right next to you, they would instantly just trip. But what was it? I think, was it you, Nikki, or was it Karma, who was using the switch axe, and I just kept on being launched into the sky.
That was me.
Yeah, I just remember just every time I'd see you just swing your switch axe, and I'd instantly just get sent flying. I'm like, yay, I get to deal like mounting damage, but at the same time, it's like, wow, you either hit me dead on, or I was in a terrible place.
Well, there was that one where I jumped on top of one of the monsters, stabbed it enough times, and then started doing the elemental discharge. And I think I just knocked all of you back with the explosion from the switch axe.
So that explains all those burn marks I had on my body.
Also, speaking of mountain, the whole rodeo scenario you get when you're on the back of these things is so good. You have to just keep mashing the attack button. They'll try and shake you off. You've got to brace. You've got to like hold down the right trigger, I think it was. But you can also jump to the different parts of their body as well. So you can go from like their head to their back to the tail. And if you are able to sort of hold on long enough, you get to do a really good like wind-up attack that does tons of damage.
Can we also just take a moment to appreciate the cats?
They're so precious. Every time I'm close to carting, he just comes around and goes, here's a bug that will heal you, and just spray you with green smoke, and you're instantly better. It's so good.
I think my cat hated me then because I didn't see it do anything.
Did you feed it a sausage at the end of the hunt?
I never fed it once, so maybe that's why.
I mean, that's a pretty, that said though, that's a really nice segue. The food in this game, holy!
Yeah, it's so good. The little animation that plays as well. I love how food is looking in games lately. Like they're putting so much effort into it.
I just want to point out that no matter what dish you ordered from I don't even know what her name is.
She's like your handler. I don't know her name.
Because normally you have like a guild mom. I don't think she is a guild mom though. I think she might just be your handler, maybe.
I'm sorry, but is guild mum the technical term?
Well, yes, yeah, it is. Although technically it's guild mam, MA''am. Sorry. Although some of them are literally just referred as guild mums because they handle multiple hunters and they're meant to basically just rear you up into the best hunter you can be, taking on vicious foes like Diablos.
Here's a pot lid, go kill it.
That reminds me, there is actually I wonder if they're going to bring it, what type of gimmicky weapons they're going to bring in, because there was one where for the sword and shield you got given a ladle and a pot pan lid.
I need this.
And that was your weapon.
Saying that actually, I don't know if anyone else struggled, but I struggled a lot with the smaller weapons, like the sword and the shield. Like I felt like I was just doing absolutely nothing with them. I feel against the really big monsters, you've got to bring a big weapon.
I'm gonna have to interject and just say that whenever it comes to demos and those types of weapons where it's very much hitting lots of times, you need the right element, because with the dual blades, same with the sword and shield, they're much more element based rather than like raw damage. So with the dual blades, we got given the water ones, which were great against Anjanath, but horrible against the likes of Jagras, who is practically water.
And the great thing about that as well is if you bring the wrong weapon to a fight, you can go back to camp and change your weapon out. You can change your entire loadout to fit. So, I don't know, one of the monsters runs away to the next hiding spot, you can quickly pop back to camp and change up your weapons to something that's a bit more appropriate.
See, in my head as well, that is good, because if you're soloing, say for example, you're fighting one of the monsters that's quite heavy armored, you take a weapon to deal with that. Once you've knocked that off, in theory, I mean, by all means, correct me if I'm understanding this wrong, but then you could go to camp and switch out for a weapon that's more suitable to just dealing damage. Is that right?
Yes. So some of the monsters. So what was it? So there's a monster that I believe they've shown, although I think I'm getting it wrong. Okay, so in my head, I feel like they've shown off that Agnactor is coming into world, although part of me thinks it's actually Lavasioth, which is basically the lava version of Geradatos, so a fish with legs but with lava. With Agnactor, he naturally has hard armor, and you can only break it off when it's either, well, basically you need either really high sharpness, which tends to be white or purple sharpness, or otherwise your weapons will bounce, or you damage it whilst its armor is hot, when it's just basically drilled through the magma, and it just becomes like a spinning hot molten mess that just destroys new players basically. But when you knock it off, it actually increases the damage you can do using sharp weapons. And with Uragon, who did get demoed and revealed to be part of World, if you break his chin, you will actually get increased affinity against his chin. So if you bring in a blunt weapon, crack his jaw open, and then go in with a sword, you'll actually be dealing more damage.
Yeah, I think so.
I hope I explained that right.
I think it became apparent during. I'm really bad with the names. Big Nose again. What's his name?
Yeah, Anjanath.
Anjanath, yes. When I was using the heavy bowgun, because they just gave you a huge amount of ammo, different ammo types, I switched out to the armor penetrating ammo or something.
Pierce.
Piercing ammo, and it was just knocking pieces off this thing. Like, it almost had none of its like outer armor left by the end of the fight.
Yeah, that was kind of the same with Bareth. I mean, whenever Bareth rolled in mud, if you switched the light bowgun to water, you'd see your damage like double. No, not even double, because I think it'd be like 10 times the amount of damage, because I remember seeing some of the water shots registering as 2 damage, but then when it had his mud armor on, it was dealing like 22 damage, which is pretty significant.
I think my only issue is though, like being a new player, I have no idea about any of this, and I felt there was no feedback from the game to let me know like that is what I should be doing.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that as well. Like the actual, and again, that might, I know that the full game, there is like a dedicated tutorial that takes you through like the opening section of the game. But like in terms of the beta, there was definitely a lack of information being delivered to the player. And I was struggling a little bit as well.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I mean, I feel like it's the same problem though that they had with the 3DS when they were offering demos to that, because they gave you like a set weapon, but because of the way the weapons kind of behave, it's always been a nightmare of going, oh, should I be using this weapon against it? Because I know with the free Ultimate demo on the 3DS, you fought against a Lagombi, which is basically a giant rabbit who throws snowballs at you and will bobsleigh around. Yes, that is a thing.
That sounds adorable. I want 12 of them.
I kind of hope Lagombi makes a return. Like, there are quite a few monsters, which, yes, I have plug. I wrote an article about 5 monsters that I want to see in Monster Hunter World, and one of them isn't Lagombi, but holy crap, if Brachydios returns, please bring him back. I want to see him in high definition so I can see all his glorious explosions.
I feel like we need another article of another 5 monsters that you want to see.
I might have to. 5 adorable monsters I want to return. There we go.
5 adorable monsters that I want to destroy in Monster Hunter World.
And harvest their bones.
Don't make it so grim. You make it sound like I have some kind of problem.
I mean, we kind of are. Like, we've just come to this new world, and we're just completely destroying the ecosystem. Like, absolutely just harvesting everything. Like the entire town's just made of bones, and it's a little bit disturbing.
It's fine. We're just wearing their skin as armor, and we're getting their natural attributes from it. Wearing the Rathalos armor increases my damage and makes me more resistant to fire, and my weapons are made of fire. It's fine.
How do you think they worked that one out?
Huh?
Like, how do you reckon they just like threw the skin of this animal on top of a hunter and be like, right, how do you feel? And they're just like, I feel like fire.
I'm just gonna say there's a few bits of lore in the game that not everyone knows, because Monster Hunter lore is basically even worse than the Grimoire cards from Destiny, believe it or not.
Let's not talk
so
about those.
So it doesn't exist.
It exists in certain weapons. Like, very specific weapons. That's the only time, and there's like the odd book. So if you get in Japan, they've got massive like collector's version of the book. So you know how Square Enix kind of does their collector's edition or their official player's guide? There's one for Monster Hunter, except it's an encyclopedia, which is insane. I mean, I picked one of them up, and you could not, if not kill someone out with it, because it's that dense.
So there is a huge amount. It's just hidden.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of stuff that's kind of Japan restricted. I mean, there's going to be actually a good thing to bring up is the fact that there's going to be DLC that's actually going to be Japan exclusive for Monster Hunter World, and that's with the Universal Studios Japan, where there's always been like this running thing, I feel like, where you'd always get these weird but glamorous armor that just makes you look baller and glamorous as hell, if not fabulous. But it's going to be apparently Japan restricted to the point that unless your PSN account is actually, I should also point out, it's actually PlayStation exclusive as well, but unless you've got a Japanese PlayStation account, you can't even use the DLC. You have to hope that you've got like a Japanese friend, or you can somehow find a Japanese person that's hosting the quest so that you can get the required materials to even make the armor and weapons.
But why?
I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can hope for is the fact that we're getting exclusive DLC, which isn't like, it's like fighting fire with fire. You're still going to get Ash, but I feel like that's the only way they're going to be able to convince both sides of the player base, the Japanese and or the Eastern and the Western player base, to actually try and communicate with each other.
They should just do it the Splatoon way and just give us monthly quests. But speaking of that, they have confirmed that the game is going to be getting like regular content updates and new quests.
Yeah, so with the 3D, I don't know if they're going to continue the same system. I know that the game director, whose name's escaping me right now, actually did a couple interviews where he actually spoke in depth about the way they're doing it. So there's going to be like weekly, I think it was weekly quests where they're going to have like unique modifiers. And one of the screenshots shown for it was like a teeny tiny great Jagras that was like the size of a Palico that you had. And then you had like a medium-sized one, which was the size of like the normal Jagras. And there was a gigantic one that was practically the size of an Anjanath.
Oh no, yeah, I saw this. I like the idea of this.
Yeah, I mean that was actually like a thing in free Ultimate where you could fight like micro-sized ones, and there was this dumbass bird that you could fight called the Kurapeko, whose unique ability was the fact that he could summon other monsters. And one of those dreaded monsters is called a Devil Joe, which is basically a giant pickle that loves to eat with legs and could breathe dragon fire. And that was one of the things that he could summon, and it was tiny, like not even Palico sized for 3U. It was just, do you remember seeing those bugs?
Bugs?
Yes.
Do you mean the dung beetles?
No.
Oh, the dung beetle that I punted. That was probably the highlight of the game for me.
Please stop the dung beetle abuse. They're useful.
So we were in the middle of a hunt, and I just kicked a dung beetle and stole the poop that I could throw. Why not?
The irony is that you were using a kin set later on. Were you successful with using that in the end or not?
Sort of. So the insect blade felt the most ineffective to me, probably because of the way I was using it. I was pretty much just pole vaulting over monsters and not really hitting them. It wasn't until towards the very end that I started to see the buffs that you get from it. But I didn't know what any of them did. There was no explanation of what any of it did and how I got it. So there was like 3 slots for these buffs, and I think at most I managed to get 2. And I don't really know how.
Yeah, I remember trying to explain to you how it worked, and it kind of went over your head.
Yeah, I think in the middle of the fight as well, it probably wasn't the best time to try and learn that one. But yeah, it's a really fun weapon. But again, yeah, it doesn't have any attacks that kind of stand out. Like everything just felt very ineffective. You're kind of just brushing a feather against the monster all the time.
I mean, I'm not super well adept with the kin set, with the insect glaive, but I know my friend is, and he told me that he basically could maintain his entire position in the air for an entire fight, to the point that and he jokes about this because that's the great thing about World, is the fact that you've got now emergent gameplay. So he was just constantly toppling over Anjanath, and Rathlos he claims that Rathlos recognized him as a competitor, as a king of, and came down, fireballed Anjanath, and just left.
It's mad. So yeah, I started to sort of get used to that. The sort of being able to juggle yourself in the air. It's a little bit tricky to do, but you can do it, and obviously it eats your stamina. But the thing I found very strange was that I could barely mount monsters with this thing. I think I managed to do it twice only, and it felt like I should have been doing it a lot more. I didn't really understand why it wasn't happening.
Yeah, I mean, that is one thing that the game doesn't really show, and I feel like it's one of those cases where you have to experience it a lot to actually understand how it's used.
And it felt like all weapons, it was just kind of I've mounted it now. Oh, okay, this is happening. Don't know why or how I've done it. Because even other times when I was jumping from a height to get onto them, it wouldn't happen. But then other times I'd be on the ground and suddenly I'd just be on top of it and I'd be like, oh, okay, this is happening.
Yeah, I think I remember when we first hunted as the three of us, I feel like it was you were using the insect glaive and Nikki and I managed to mount it twice as well, to the point that we kind of outperformed you in that regard for mounting. I think it was Nikki and I were on the end screen where it was saying, oh, this was the most useful. This was the person that used the slinger the most. This was the one that recovered the most. And you weren't on the board, even though we were...
Yeah, that was the one in particular that I was just pole vaulting over the monster because I couldn't get the height right no matter what, so I was doing nothing.
I mean, actually, I feel like we're skirted around this question quite a bit, but what is the weapon you're going to main?
Sorry, say that again?
What is the weapon you're going to main? So the one that you're going to stick using it against all types of monsters. So I'll start off and I'm going to say that personally, I want to see how far I can get with the Charge Blade because I've already mained Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate with the Lance, and then I mained Monster Hunter Generations with Gun Lance. So I'm going to stick with the guarding criteria and go with the Charge Blade.
For myself, I'm really not too sure. I feel like I didn't get quite enough time with the beta to be able to say for sure. But the weapon that I definitely had the most fun with, Greatsword. Just the amount of damage that thing does. Like you're very slow, you're very cumbersome, but when you hit with that thing, it's so satisfying. It's probably that and the heavy bowgun. Although the beta obviously gives you a ton of different ammo and stuff, so I'm not too sure how I'd feel about having to farm all the stuff to be able to get the ammo for it. But yeah, I think that's the Greatsword is the one for me.
I think I have to admit the Switch Axe. I think Switch Axe is the one for me. I quite like the bow. It's just annoying that the bow didn't really feel like it was doing anything.
With the ranged weapons, same with the bowgun and the bow, but with those two, you're very much dependent on what types of ammo and how it shoots. And in terms of actually grinding, at least in the previous generations, there was always like a farming section, and in that farming section, you could actually easily harvest or just generate resources for the actual weapons, and you could also just straight up outright buy the ammo for it.
Yeah, I remember you saying actually that it's not that hard to get it. But even so, like having to stock up sort of before and after every fight, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just the maintenance of it. I mean, with the introduction of the fact that you don't have to have two separate armors to actually use a weapon type, because previously it used to be you had Blade Master armor, and you had Gunner armor. And the fact is, if you wanted to dabble in both, you'd have to make like the same set of armor twice, just so then you could use it. I mean,
that does not sound fun.
It just doubled the grind basically, almost unnecessarily. I mean, in Monster Hunter Generations, I've got the same armor, like in terms of number of armors where I've had to have the Blade Master and Gunner. I'd say maybe 4 of them are like the 2 separate classes for both, for the same armor, and for me it was an unnecessary grind, especially when you try to actually max out the armor. So imagine just grinding that same monster for 5 different pieces of armor, getting all of the necessary resources to even max it out. Ugh, so many hours, so many dead monsters. Gormagala was just...
They are all extinct now.
I basically just skinned it alive at the end of it.
But I feel Monster Hunter World, you do have that freedom to dabble with different weapons. I don't feel like you're gonna be forced to be locked into just the one, and it won't take too much to switch between them.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, Monster Hunter World's encouraging you to use as many weapons and armor types as you can.
I mean, with the demo, they actually... I'm pretty sure this is still going to be part of the main game, but it's the fact that they give you button prompts to show you what to do. I mean, they've introduced quite a few moves into the move sets for all of the weapons that it's kind of like, ooh, how do I actually do this new thing? Because there's a lot of small nuances to it. So with the bow, they've made it so you can now do charges. I think it's like charge 2, if not 3 of the bow. Whenever you are aimed down sights for the bow and you dodge to the left or the right, you will instantly charge into the second one, into the second shot. And with the lance, they've kind of rejigged it so now it's practically an unstoppable killing force of nature, because you've now got the super guard, which makes it so that you don't take as much damage now. Your stamina doesn't get depleted as much whenever you do take a hit, and you can directly counter off it, as well as the fact that you can now just do a ton of like different movements for it. Because the way it's almost like, I'd almost argue they've basically taken like the vocabulary of a jump from Mario, where just hitting B, like depending on how you interact with that one button, will depend on what type of output you get. And it's the same with Monster Hunter, because just dodging doesn't just mean dodge. Well, how do you dodge? And I think the way they've done it is going to be both a great thing for new players, but also a massive hurdle for players to understand in terms of, oh, how do I actually get good?
I absolutely agree with that. I had to write down all the different weapon combos on a bit of paper, so whenever I was switching out my weapons, I could just remember what some of my basic like combos were. Because otherwise, you are really ineffective. With certain weapons, you'll just be mashing a triangle and just doing the same hit over and over, but not following up with anything other than that. And I feel that was my problem with the insect glaive. Just wasn't able to chain anything together.
And I didn't get on with the insect glaive personally. I found it a bit too like that and the lancers. I just found it a bit too cumbersome.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember the first time I hunted with you guys when we were in the Wildspire Waste, and I said, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna show like we've hunted the Great Jagras and we did a bit of Anjanath. I'm gonna give you guys a step up in terms of challenge. I'm gonna show you like the apex hunter, the top of the food chain kind of monster, and we went against Diablos, and you guys were carting left, right, and center, and I was going, haha, I haven't carted once yet, and then I instantly cart twice.
A bit of humble pie.
Yeah, I got served a bit of humble pie.
Yeah, that was the one when I was using the bow, and just a perfect example of that, where I didn't understand how to use it, and even just how to use the ammo for it. I was doing nothing, and because I couldn't figure out how to dodge properly, I was just getting absolutely trampled. Like, he'd just look at me in charge, and there's nothing I could do. It's so sad.
Yeah, I mean, with the bow, there was quite, like, the fact that you can now see the damage numbers is both such a rewarding thing, but also incredibly soul-wrenching to know that what you thought was effective to shoot at isn't actually. I mean, I know you said that you struggled to deal damage with the bow, but for me, when I was fighting against Anjanath, it was one of my fastest initial times with actually killing him, because I think in one shot, I think in terms of like the peak damage, I managed to get off like 200 plus damage by using the dragon shot, just because of its piercing nature, and it just goes through all of the body parts and just tears right through it.
Put that into perspective, I was doing 170 with the greatsword, with like one of my really big charge up attacks. So yeah, that's massive damage.
Yeah, although that said, with the great sword, I don't know what the higher damage was, but I know I did peak with 200 at one point, but you do need a bit of setup time with it, because with the great sword, it's got 3 charges. You've got the overhead slash, you've got the true slash, and now you've got, sorry, no, you had the overhead one, you had the underarm one, and now you've got the true great sword charge, I think it's called. And each one increases in damage, basically.
Yeah, and trying to land those is so very difficult. You have to really understand the monster's attack patterns, their behaviors, know when they're going to charge, if you're going to be able to hit them before they hit you. There's a lot to take into account there.
Yeah, I mean, most of the weapons, like, I know Monster Hunter YouTube channel actually did like a few videos on all of the weapons and saying, oh, this is the technical set, this is the power set, this is the range set. And the way they kind of boil it down is really good, but at the same time, feels like you're almost skill gating to a certain extent on how like welcome a player is. I mean, with the charge blade, I always had whenever I have like a hunt the following day. So when I picked it up on the Saturday, I was relatively fine with it. After like a few hunts, getting to the rhythm of it, because one of the techniques is actually using the charge files and basically just empowering your shield and your sword. I could not get for the life of me the actual like routine to charge my shield. But with my sword, I was doing fine, but then rolled round to the next day, I had an opposite problem where I was able to constantly refresh my shield, but not my sword, and by the Monday, I kind of got the hang of it, but it's a really technical weapon that requires a lot of, I wouldn't say mental thought, but it requires like, almost like a weird, like a flow almost, in terms of being able to get into a rhythm of, oh, this is the attack, then you do this, then that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we said earlier that the game sort of encourages you to try out the different weapons, but there are certain weapons that are a sort of higher skill level, and I feel like it's going to take a long time to really master the weapons, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it's great fun, sort of seeing your own progression with a certain weapon. But I feel for newbies, trying to switch between a lot of weapons at the start is going to be very, very difficult, and it's going to take a long time to sort of get a handle on a lot of them. So it probably is best to pick one that you feel comfortable with, roll with that until you think you can go back to that, or fall back to that weapon whenever you need to, and pick up something else along the way.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely.
In terms of monsters then, who was your favourite out of the 6 that we got to face? I mean, just to remind you, we had Great Jagras, we had Anjanath, Rathalos, and then for the Ancient Forest, and then for the Wildspire Waste, we had Barath, Gyarados, and Diablos.
Rathalos, 100%.
I think I'm going to have to go with Rathalos as well.
The one where we banged our head against it. I think, how many times did we try to kill it but failed?
We didn't actually bring it down.
Well, we knocked it out of the sky like once or twice, but we didn't actually kill it. But
that was the one where track it and get everyone fighting it at one time. It often kind of became a 1v1 where the other 2 players were bumbling about elsewhere, just trying to find where it is, and it's hard. Probably our fault in not communicating better and where to go, but because there are so many different branching paths, it's hard to stick together. Like, you do find that you're with someone, next thing you know, they've taken a left, you've gone right, and you're on completely different paths now, and it's quite hard to find where you are and meet back up with people.
I think the thing I really loved as well that stood out to me in regards to that fight was, as you mentioned earlier, when you knock the waterfall and it knocks it down, was jumping off this mountain and just hitting the attack button and just slamming down on its face. Just felt so good.
And I think it had the best mechanics out of all the ones before. I love that it would just pick you up and sort of toss you and get in your face and pin you down. It was just so much fun.
Oh, don't remind me every time Rathalos. So when we were hunting together, there was a point where I was going bow and I would constantly knock it out. But whenever it would get back up, or when even Nicky or Kayla knocked it down, it would get back up and it would grab me and throw me across the map.
It really had a thing for you. It would not leave you alone.
It's the same with Anjanath. It kept on just putting me in its mouth, and I'm like, is there something on my hunter that tastes so good to monsters?
The taste of man flesh.
Man flesh, yes.
Suddenly, there's just like Urukai and orcs and the Monster Hunter universe.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, could you imagine that? Like, just derailing this entire thing. Like, Shadow of War mixed with Monster Hunter. You're like, all right, go, monster. And they're like, Diablos comes in, like, with an orc captain.
Just dominating Rathalos and just tearing apart another monster with him.
Oh my god. There's a thought. What type of crossover would you like to see in Monster Hunter World then?
See, I've already had my crossover.
Horizon Zero Dawn?
No! Monster Hunter and Metal Gear.
Why Metal Gear?
No, it's a thing they did. In Peace Walker, there are monster hunting mission, and you literally get to fight some of the monsters.
Yeah, they did.
And it's great. It's like
You got to fight against Rathalos.
Yeah, and you're just there with like, RPGs and AKs, just like, come at me, bro. Or, you try and do it non-lethal and it takes like an hour.
So what? You just get armor that makes you look like... Wait, which snake would it be? Metal Snake? Solid Snake? Liquid Snake?
Well, firstly, there isn't a Metal Snake.
Isn't?
But it's Naked Snake.
Oh.
Because it's Peace Walker, so you're playing as Big Boss. But they're non-canon missions. It's a bit of fun, but it's happened. It's in the game, and it's you get to do the little spit roast mini game with a ration, and it's hilarious.
Oh my god! I'm just imagining Big Boss just sitting in front of a campfire with the music just going. And then it goes, so tasty. What about you, Kayla? What crossover would you love to see?
I don't know. I'm racking my brains. I feel like something sci-fi thrown in, and then maybe like Mass Effect, like with all the different planets that you can go to and different monsters to hunt on the planets.
A Mass Effect Monster Hunter.
I'm down with this.
Just go to Capcom and say, right, we know they're not companies that you tend to work with, but...
Can you do this for me, please?
Also, I just checked. Yes, one of the monsters in the hunt quests for Peace Walker is indeed Rathalos.
He is kind of like the flagship monster for Monster Hunter in the West. I mean, if you actually look at most of the box arts, it does contain Rathalos. I mean, in Japan, for Monster Hunter World, they have one of the monsters that's supposed to be the flagship called Nergigante, whose sole ability, the unique defining thing, is the fact that it can rapidly grow back bones, and the fact that it kills elder dragons.
Sorry, I had a better crossover idea. Doom and Monster Hunter.
Yes! There's like all the monsters are like, yeah, we got this, and then just fucking, Doom theme starts playing. You're just like, rip and tear.
I mean, imagine a hell-twisted Rathalos with rocket launchers, and you just got your power armor and your BFG, and just all made out of these crazy monsters. You just rip off their arm guns and just like, yeah, that's my weapon now.
Imagine as a hunter, you get to wear his armor, but you wear, instead of the gun that you use, is the the super shotty.
Yes.
And it's core defining. It's got rapid fire, spread shot. That would make God. And then you've got who would the monster be though? I don't know what monster would fit Doom as a whole. I mean, you got the big fat uglies, but I don't know. I guess Pinky maybe, but I don't know any monster that matches it per se. I mean,
you've got the Minotaurs, I guess. You've got what are the big eyeball things?
I think I know what you're talking about, but I don't there's not exactly a 1-to-1 scale per se. I mean, the only thing that's coming to mind is just having a pink Rathian. Wait, I'm trying to remember. Is it Rathian or Raytheon? Because apparently there's now like canonical ways of saying it, and any other way is just wrong.
Oh, it's the internet. I'm sure we will be corrected at several points.
No, this is like the in the game, because it's now fully voice acted. There's now like a core defining way in how you pronounce the monsters now. Yeah, no, you've got Pink Rathian, who's, I'm trying to remember what her thing was. I'm pretty sure Pink Rathian's unique trait was the fact that it does like a sky pirouette, and it just like lashes its tail around, kind of like a whip, and just flicks it around, deals poison to you, and it's a painful thing to witness. Oh god, the Vietnam flashbacks resume. Sorry, I just went on a kind of tangent.
That's fine. So I guess we're kind of wrapping up now, I suppose. Like, what's our sort of like final thoughts on the beta?
I mean, for me, I knew Monster Hunter World was going to be, I'm going to go so far to say that it is potentially 2018's Game of the Year for me, even though it's not even out yet.
Hipster.
Shh.
No, I mean, to be fair, like the second I saw the announcement, I was like, I'm buying this. I need this game because I love Monster Hunter, but my biggest trouble with Monster Hunter 4 was just the 3DS. I struggled with the 3DS's controls. I've got quite big hands. But on a console with 2 analog sticks and proper controller, it feels a lot more responsive, and I feel like I'm actually in control. So it was going to be a purchase, but after playing the beta, it's now like, even if my legs are broken, I will crawl my way to buy a copy. That analogy is pointless because I'm going to order it online anyway, but you get what I mean.
So I wasn't sure when I picked it up. Like, the controls felt clunky. I didn't understand the weapons. Didn't feel effective fighting the monsters. And like my first day of it, I was just like, I don't know if I'm going to carry on with this. Picked it up again though, carried on, and things started to start to flow a bit better. Start to understand things a bit more, like understand how the movement works from the game. And yeah, it's now become a must-buy for me. It feels like the time invested into it is really going to be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, a few things before I forget. So one of our fellow writers, Mordanen, couldn't join us today, and Karma sadly has internet connection issues. But Nordanen wanted to point out that with the monster hunts online, it kind of ramps the difficulty based on the number of players in it. And the fact that he also said that he found the aerial attacks to be a bit cumbersome, but I feel like we've already kind of covered that.
Yeah, I feel like this is one that I wouldn't really play much on my own, to farm a couple of things here and there, but I feel like the most enjoyment is from playing with friends and just getting those moments of craziness happen that you can, or like laugh at someone fail absolutely miserably, or be in absolute awe from like an amazing attack that someone pulls off.
Like me eating that humble pie and seeing you guys get completely destroyed by Diablos.
There's only one time.
Yep, and the other time I just kept on being tossed about between Anjanath and Rathalos.
But even that was still fun, even though like I went down so many times. I never felt like if we failed a hunt, I never felt frustrated or annoyed about it.
Yeah, that was something I noticed as well. It was like every time you went down, it was, or you ran out of time. It's like, okay, this is how we're going to change it up. Like you knew how, like you had at least had an idea of what to do. It wasn't just a case of I just died again because of sheer RNG. Maybe you weren't using the right weapon. Maybe you were attacking the wrong part. So like that come the second, third, fourth, or how many times it takes you, that you're going to improve, and eventually when you do take it down, it's so satisfying.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I know for the demo they've increased our power. So it'll be interesting to see how it fares in high rank, because that's when they kind of throw at you like the really tough ones. Because I know in Free Ultimate, you had like incremental steps. So you started off with Great Jaggy, then you kind of moved into Lagiacrus, who's basically a thunder god of the ocean, who's pretty pathetic on land, but his core defining fact is the fact that he's basically Mjolnir. in the form of a giant sea serpent that's practically Loch Ness.
Well, we've seen in the trailers the giant, is it the dragon? Like the lava dragon or something? So we've seen these things and we're going to fight them. So that's going to be really interesting. And the trailer has shown like being able to use cannons and stuff as well. So I'm really looking forward to these massive monster fights.
Yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, we've kind of talked our hearts out for Monster Hunter.
It's a good game.
It's okay.
I mean, it's all right. I mean, I don't know.
There's one that's gonna go get it even if their legs were broken.
Don't judge me.
We just ask our head of site if he's going to be okay and pick one up for us.
Yeah, Ashley.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll just poke Platinum a question and just go, hey, can you pick this game up for us? We're kind of short.
But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it, and I think once the game's out, there'll be a lot of us playing it, and it's going to be really good.
All right. I've been Owen, your host, and I've been joined by...
Oh no, sorry, I thought you cut out there.
I feel like I should lead on to whoever...
So yeah, he's been your host. I'm Nick. I don't know what I am.
I'm Kayla, triggering all veteran Monster Hunter players as much as possible.
How do I jump?
Good night.
Bye.
Bye bye.